Hey everybody, welcome back to the Broadway and Beyond video podcast. My name is Sarah Corey, and today we have on a very special guest. He's a good friend of mine, Mr. Joe Iconis. He's written musicals like Be More Chill, The Black Suits, and Broadway Bounty Hunter, some awesome stuff, and he is our guest today. So, welcome the Mr. Joe Iconis.
Hello. Hi. Thanks for having me.
How are you doing today?
I'm doing really well. It's a few days after Christmas, and so I'm on Long Island with my family, and I'm at my brother's house right now.
Nice, nice.
Yeah.
Okay, so what have you been doing in this time for fun? Any new hobbies or interests, new routines? What has been different?
I mean, kind of everything has been different. Actually, that's a lie. Lots of things have been different, and lots of things have been exactly the same. I when I mean, I'm a writer, right? So like I spend some of my time writing and some of my time performing and some of my time in rehearsals. And so the writing portion of my life has kind of stayed the same insofar as like, I have deadlines and I have to write material to make those deadlines and so sometimes under normal circumstances when I write, I'm writing in my apartment. And so that hasn't changed. The stuff that's changed is that like everything that has to do with me leaving my apartment, that's been
Yeah.
what's different. But I mean, something that's been like cool or was cool at least about the pandemic was that when it first started, I was coming off of a few years of like constant work. Like I
Yeah.
was just going from
Yeah.
one thing to another. And so I was able to just like chill out a little bit and like spend time with my wife Lauren Marcus, um, because we both have been working so much for so many years that like we just hadn't like seen each other a lot, which is hilarious because a lot of the things we worked on were like the same stuff. Like she was in shows that I wrote and we did shows
Yeah.
together, but we just never got to see each other. And so we got to like hang out a lot at home and like we got to watch a ton of movies
Love that.
and so like that stuff was cool, the like hanging at
Yeah.
home
Have you
part.
seen Have you seen Soul yet? I just watched it a couple days ago.
No, I haven't seen it yet. I'm so
You
excited
would
to
love
watch
it.
it.
It's so good. So good.
Yeah, no, I'm super stoked. But I'm a huge movie guy anyway, like, and I've always been super into film, and I feel like if I hadn't gone into theater I would have done something in film.
Yeah.
And the busier that I've gotten in theater, the harder it's been to just like see as many movies as I used to see.
Yeah.
And so in quarantine I've gotten to like watch a million movies that I
Yeah.
I had missed over the years, which has been cool.
It's awesome. We just watched I just watched Sweeney Todd, the whole thing.
Oh yeah,
Have you seen it, the movie?
the Tim Burton movie. Yeah,
Yeah.
of course.
Yeah.
Yeah, it's so good.
Yeah, I watched that. I got really into Rent.
Yeah,
Yeah.
my fave.
Um, and yeah, so definitely seen a lot of new stuff. So wait, what was the thing that you were just? I saw a thing on your story yesterday. It was like a concert. What was that?
I think. Oh yeah. So okay. So there's this restaurant slash theater called the West Bank Cafe, and in the West Bank Cafe is this theater called the Laurie Beachman Theater, and the Laurie Beachman Theater is like this. It's this cabaret space, and it's the first place that we ever did an Iconis and Family show.
Okay.
We did it in November of 2007. That was our first show ever, and it's like been this cabaret space that I've performed at so many times over the years. And like my wedding reception was at the West Bank Cafe.
Okay.
It's like this restaurant and place that like has like I have deep connections with and has been really near and dear to my heart. And so because of the pandemic, they've been in a lot of trouble, and they were talking about closing. And it's this restaurant it's on the corner of 42nd and Ninth. It's been there since the 70s. It's been there for 42 years, and it's run by this really cool guy, Steve Olson, who's just such a supporter of like theater and artists, and so I helped produce this like massive telethon
Hmm.
that happened in order to raise money for the West Bank Cafe, in the hopes that we could raise enough money for them to pay off some debts and to stay open and to like pay some rent for them over the next year. And so that the telethon was on Christmas Day, and it was 10 hours long. and there were hundreds of artists who took part, and
That's
I did
great.
a bunch of songs on it and also like helped get people hooked up with it, and we raised so much money. The goal was $250,000, and as of now we've raised like 340,
Whoa, that's
which is
awesome.
crazy.
That's
Yeah,
awesome. That's
yeah,
great.
yeah. And it's
Hmm.
been funny because like I do a Christmas extravaganza every year, and
Yeah.
this this would have been our
Yeah.
13th year, but we had to not do it obviously because of COVID. And the Christmas extravaganza, for people who haven't seen it, it's a show that it takes its inspiration from like Christmas movies and
Yeah.
Christmas specials, and
Yeah.
the plot is kind of crazy, but the plot always involves like someone trying to take over the theater, and
Yeah.
it's like myself and my gang have to like band together to save the theater
I love
and
that.
save Christmas. And this like West Bank Cafe telethon, like the more I was doing it, the more I felt like, oh, this is like the Christmas extravaganza just in real life. Like it was like
Yeah.
literally like the plots of the Christmas extravaganza is like, oh, this is actually happening
Yeah.
for real this year. So yeah.
Who was I know Will Roland, he had like a mustache character. What was his called?
Yeah, he was the villain last year. The name of his character was Cyril von
Yeah,
Miserthorpe.
yeah, 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 yeah.
Yeah.
My friend did a cosplay of that character.
Yeah. Oh, I love that. I love
Yeah.
that just because we've done it for so long, the fact that like people now do art and like
Yeah.
and fiction and cosplay of Christmas extravaganza characters just makes me so happy.
Yeah.
It's crazy to me. I love it.
I hope I can see it next year. It'd be
Yeah,
awesome.
yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. I hope so too.
Because we had I think we told you this, but we had tickets for 2-player game for June. So hopefully next June, maybe. Maybe.
I think so. I'm feeling good. I'm feeling
Yeah.
good about like spring summer for performance in general.
Yeah.
And like yeah, George and I could not be more ready to do it. We're just like as soon as we're allowed to,
Yeah.
we're gonna
Yeah.
we're pretty ready.
Um
So
yeah. So were you currently in London before the shutdown? If so, how long had you been there, and when did you find out that Be More Chill would have to close, and were you working in Chicago or still in London?
I had just come back from London. The whole thing is so strange because I was in London a ton. Like I was in London for the start of Be More Chill rehearsals, and then I came back because I did this big Iconis and family concert at Lincoln Center.
Yeah.
And so I was back in New York for 1 week to do this big concert. I went back to London, and I went back to London for like end of rehearsals and previews and opening and all that stuff. And then I got back to New York, like, right at the top of March. And so it was only a couple weeks. I wasn't even back 2 weeks when everything shut down. And so I kind of felt like I never left London. Like being
Yeah.
in London was like the last thing that I did,
Yeah.
And so, yeah, when I left London, like COVID just it wasn't really a thing. Like it was in those 2 weeks when it felt like, oh, this is this thing that's happening in Asia. And then like Italy
Yeah.
is going to come here. That's when it started to feel real. And and a few people in the Be More Chill London cast like were kind of sick right at the end. And
They were
so
they were like sick from like COVID?
I don't know if it was ever like officially like
Mm.
diagnosed with
Yeah.
that COVID, but people started getting sick, and and so our last like couple performances of Be More Chill in London was like very, the assistant director was like reading the role of Jake, and and Miles was like mouthing the
That's
role. So
funny.
it was like it was really like it was so weird. But yeah, so it's when it paused in London, like I never in a million years thought that we would be here and still talking about
Yeah.
how theater hasn't come back. Like I just because I'm from New York originally, from Long Island, but I've been going to see shows in the city since I was 6 years old, and it's just so ingrained in me, like the show must go on, and it's so
Yeah.
ingrained in me that like no matter what happens, theater never stops. And so I just could not believe that theater would be stopped for as long as it has
Yeah.
been stopped for. But it was really just a bummer. And like the craziest thing about having a show running is just that like you just don't know. Like I know as much as people who are like fans of the show, and
Yeah.
it's like for the whole year people will like message me
Yeah,
on
like
social media or tweet at
when?
me, yeah, like when is it coming back? And I always feel like I don't know, like I truly know as much as you do, because everyone is just like we're ready, we want it to come back, we just don't know when it can,
Yeah.
you know. So yeah,
Yeah.
so it was a bummer. And as far as Chicago, like Chicago, it sucked because we were, I mean, we were like just about
Yeah.
to go there. Like it was like just about to
Yeah.
start, and we were doing a bunch of work on it in New York with like the Chicago MD, and like
Mm.
I mean, it was going to be awesome, and so it was such a bummer for that to like not even get to like start that
Yeah.
before it had to pause.
When did you cast Chicago?
We cast Chicago like in fall through winter.
Oh, okay. Um,
Yeah.
yeah. Did the cast got announced, didn't it?
I think that our cast got
Except
announced.
for the squib.
Cast got announced except for the script.
I
The
know
script
that.
was
Yeah.
Yeah, the
Yeah.
script was cast. I'm not, I refuse to officially say
Okay.
who was playing the script, even though I know it was leaked. Uh,
Yeah.
but it was going to be awesome, and I feel very confident that it will still be awesome when we get to do that
Yeah.
production, which we'll do, at some point.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I know that the theater looks like it was more like Two River. Yeah.
Yeah,
Then.
definitely
Yeah.
like Two River vibe. Yeah.
Yeah.
And that's something that like we're seeing with Be More Chill, where it's like we're excited about the productions feeling a little
Different.
different
Yeah.
based on like the space that they're in. And I feel like for some shows that's like the opposite of what they want to do. But
Mm.
for like London was so dope, and everyone loved working on London, and it was like, oh,
Yeah.
this is cool. It's cool because it feels like specific to this
London. Yeah.
place, and it's like, let's see how much we can do that as we do, new productions of the
Yeah.
show. Like how much can we make it feel specific to the
Yeah.
spot where it's playing.
Didn't you like change certain like hot pockets?
Yeah, yeah, yeah.
Like what are hot? Oh,
Yeah.
Pop Tarts. Pop
Yeah, it was
Tarts.
Pop Tarts. It was yeah. It was for London. That was the funniest thing. Like they were the like very like weirdo like specific cultural references that just made no sense over there. We
Yeah.
had to change, but we kept everything else like pretty much the same. All the important stuff,
Yeah.
was
The
all the
costume.
important
Yeah.
stuff remained.
The costumes look like identical,
Yeah, the costumes are pretty much identical.
except for
Um,
except for Scott's shirt, I think.
yeah,
Yeah.
yeah, there was like some little like it's like subtle changes, yeah, subtle changes,
Yeah.
and then some bigger changes, like
Yeah.
the idea, and then this remains like the hope is that the party monster, which is what
Yeah.
we'll
Yeah.
gingivitis, that
Yeah.
character will be totally different in
Different.
every
That's
production
what.
we ever do.
Yeah.
Yeah.
That's what
Yeah.
Bobby told me that he said that he said two things. He said that and he showed me what was it? Mr. Scratch.
Yeah.
He sent me a picture. Yeah, and the and he said that he wanted to have Jeremy have a new stripe for every production.
Yeah.
Yeah. And he has the monster plan for the next 5 productions in the future. Yeah, he helped me out a lot with my Michael cosplay. He sent me the pizza patch.
Oh, cool.
Yeah.
The
Yeah.
pizza patch.
It took so long, like referencing like so many photos for those patches. There's so many.
There's so many.
So many patches.
Yeah.
Okay, so how have you been holding up during this time? Have you really been affected by it? Have you been struggling to pay for certain necessities, or like has your living situation been affected at all?
Thanks for asking that. I've been okay. I'm super lucky. Insofar as I have found some nice success in the theater in the last few years of my life that has allowed me to not have to worry about paying my rent and not have to worry about existing in a way that so many friends that I have are worrying about existing at this particular time. And truly, like if the pandemic would have happened, like 4 years ago, I don't know what I would have done.
Yeah.
And so myself and my wife Lauren and my cat Diane Kitten, we've been okay. We've been able to like hold down the fort and do okay. But it's just a bummer, mentally. It's really really hard, especially because my work, like my whole life is about creating this community, and it's about getting people together in a room, and like my performative life is just as important as my writing life. And it's just always about like, let's all be together in this room and try to
Yeah.
get as many people as we can. And so that's just something that's so deeply important to me. And to have that like taken away, and not only taken away, but have that be the thing that everyone is like, you can't do this, you simply cannot do this. It's just really hard, you know.
Yeah.
And I have to believe that it will come back. I know it'll come back. But for the, you know, for the time being, and now it feels a little better because the vaccine, it's just like hope.
Yeah.
It's like actual hope.
Yeah.
But you know, in the middle there of the quarantine, it was starting to feel like, oh my gosh,
Yeah.
what am I supposed to do? Because I don't want to change the way that I think about art.
Yeah.
I don't want to change what I'm doing.
Yeah.
But it's like I just literally can't do it right now.
Yeah.
So it's hard.
Was Vermont, was that the last in-person show that you've done?
Hmm. Yeah, that was the first, last, and only in-person show that I've done during the
Oh, okay.
quarantine in Vermont. Yeah, in Vermont. You know, for those who don't know, the Weston Playhouse produced this concert, and it was me and a few peeps. It was Lauren and then our friends Seth Elliser and Ali Siebold, who are a couple who, you know, live together. And so we did this outdoor concert outside of the Vermont Country Store, and it was so cool. It
It was
was
so
really
much fun.
thrilling. It was so much
Yeah.
fun. You were there. It was great. It was so nice to be able to do that. We had we the plan and the hope was that we were going to do an Iconis and Family holiday show, not the Christmas extravaganza, but just the holiday concert at a regional theater that was going to be streamed, but it got canceled
Yeah.
for like no one was sick. It wasn't like a, you know, someone has COVID and you have to cancel. It was just I mean, it was silly reasons, but so that was the hope that was going to happen. But because of that, the only show that we've done in the year has been that Vermont show,
Yeah.
which we also were able to do because, you know, Vermont, the rates were so low
Yeah.
and people are like super safe and people are, you
Yeah.
know, just smart and they wear
Yeah.
masks and like,
Definitely.
you know, they're not idiots there.
Yeah.
So we could do a show.
How were you down there? How long were you down there? Because I think that was your last weekend, wasn't it?
Yeah. Lauren and I went, we rented a house there, in Weston, Vermont, because we really love it in Weston, Vermont. And, we were there for all of September. And that was the only time that we've like really left New York, throughout the whole pandemic. And we just did it because, you know, we love New York and we were very much like, we want to
Yeah.
stay here, you know, even when things were kind of bad. But we did it because we just wanted to, like, you know, get out of the city.
Yeah. Change of
And it
scenery.
felt, yeah,
Yeah.
truly. And like, and you know, we are people who, we're always so busy and we always have a million gigs and jobs and whatever's that like we never in normal life could ever be like, let's go live in, you know, in a house in Vermont
Yeah.
for a month. And so it just felt like, well, this is something that we will never, you know, be able to do. And so
Yeah.
why don't we just do it?
Yeah.
And we did. And so it was super, super cool. Very fun.
Yeah.
Yeah.
It was probably like two city people coming into this like very country place.
Yeah.
Like was it? I remember I saw a thing you were like taking a hike and you're like, I'm tired after like 25 minutes.
Oh yeah. I'm like the most like city dweller of
Yeah.
all time. Like it's just in me. And truly, I'm like Lauren's from the suburbs of Chicago originally, but she can fake it better than me, and she's a little more like, she has sort of like an outdoorsy streak in her. And I love nature. I love it, and it's something that I've like come to as an adult.
Yeah.
Because it was so not part of my life like growing up. But still, I just can't. I'm so unabashedly like a New Yorker, and so like we would go on these hikes and stuff. And Lauren would just look at me and like hysterically laugh because she'd be like, "You're wearing like a leather jacket, you're wearing like white sneakers, like Ray-Bans. You look like you like stepped out of Midtown Manhattan."
Yeah.
And I can't help it. It's just in me. But I've embraced that, and I feel like even in Weston, I feel like people are like kind of, I'd like to think they're like delighted by seeing me like walk down Main Street in, you know, a black leather jacket or like in like a blazer and a tie. And they'll be like, "Oh, that's that city boy here in town," you know? Yeah.
So let me see. Okay, so you already said yes, but I'm just gonna ask it anyways. Are you planning on staying in the business or look for other employment options?
Staying in the business.
Yeah.
Of course.
Yes, of course.
And I'm lucky that like I don't have to look for other
Yeah.
employment
Yeah.
options. You know, that's the truth of it. But yeah, there's just nothing else. There's something else that I want to do.
Yeah.
I love musicals, and I just love it. Not doing anything else.
Yeah.
Can't make me.
Um, have you been able to see family members and friends much?
I've been able to see family members because my family lives so close. And so the only people I've seen have been like my parents, my brother, and my aunts. Um, and so that's been good. And I've felt grateful that I have family that is so close that I've been able to see. And I've seen some friends, safely,
Hmm.
of course, but some. But that's been really hard. Like there are so many friends that I haven't seen in a year, and it's
Yeah.
just so weird, especially because I'm someone who, part my professional life is so wrapped up in my personal life, and so, I perform with these people
Yeah.
all the time, and so like to not be performing, to not
Yeah.
being able to do these concerts is also for me not being able to
See
like see
friend.
my
Yeah. Yeah.
friends,
Because
which
it's
is
the
so
Iconis. It's
weird.
the Iconis family.
Yeah,
Yeah.
yeah, and it's real. I feel like sometimes there's things like the Iconis family idea with people, whether it's theater or TV or movies or music, and it's kind of fake. When people say
Yeah.
stuff like that, when they're like, "Oh, we're like really friends in real
Yeah.
life," but we really are. Like we actually
Yeah.
genuinely are, and it's so weird to not be able to like see your
Yeah.
friends, and there's people that you perform with. It's just so weird. It's
Who's
crazy.
who started it? Like, was it you and Jason, Sweet Tooth?
Yeah, I mean the first people who were sort of made up the basis of that kind of sound were definitely me, Jason, Lance Rubin, who we wrote
Yeah.
Broadway Bounty Hunter with, Katrina Rose Deirdrickson, who sings Lisa on the Jamboree album and has been in a ton of my stuff. I feel like Jared Weiss. I
Yeah.
feel like we're kind of like the core group of peeps, and then it branched out from there.
Yeah. Um.
Jason and I so rarely talk about this, but Jason and Lance and I and this dude Matt Hinckley, who plays on Jamboree album and Things to Ruin and a whole bunch of stuff. We were in a band called the Big Galoots, and that was sort of like the first. That was like
It's
the
funny.
first kernel of the Iconis and family stuff. And some songs that have become Iconis and family songs, like Goodbye Song and Whiskey
Yeah.
Song and Lonely Woman, those started as Big Galoots songs. We only played like 5 shows, but
How do you come
it
up?
was the
How do you come up
kernel.
with that name?
I actually I don't remember. I don't remember who came up with the name the Big Galoots. I'll text them all as soon as we finish, and I'll find out. But we had a theme song, which is which is not, I guess, not like particularly like cool for bands to have theme songs, but we thought it was
No,
really
that's
funny.
that's so cool. That's so
I thought
cool.
so, and I haven't thought about it in so long, but it was "We're Galoots, the Big Galoots, knock you out of your boots, the Big Galoots." Yeah, it
I love
was
it.
pretty cool.
I love
Yeah,
it. That's amazing.
thanks.
Um, um, has anything positive happened to you during this time that might have not happened otherwise?
That's such a good question. I mean, the positive stuff is personal for sure.
Yeah.
Like the fact that I've gotten to spend so much time with Lauren has been the best. Has been so nice. So that's really cool. And I've gotten to like read a bunch. It's really just like this stuff is stuff where it feels like, oh right, I remember how to be a person.
Yeah.
I remember how to be someone who
Yeah.
wasn't just like running around,
It's like,
working on 10
yeah.
million different shows and I love being busy and I love working on a million projects, but I was working an insane amount for so many years, all with stuff that was really personal and all with stuff that was really high pressure and very high stress.
Hmm.
And so to have all of that taken away, it was a lot, but it also just allowed me to like get to a place where I wasn't so like anxious,
Yeah.
like I just had so much anxiety for so long, and the being able to just like chill
Yeah.
and
Now,
to like
now you
and
can
the
just like,
yeah
yeah.
yeah which is like it's been a palpable thing. So that part of it's been
You
really
can
really cool.
you can what do you think I'm
Hmm.
gonna say?
BMC.
Yeah, yeah. You can just be more chill.
I ruined myself for that.
Yep, you
Anytime I
did.
use the word chill,
Yep.
which I have used, and I'm chill was like definitely a part of my vocabulary pre
Yeah.
working on the musical. Like anytime I go to say it, whoever I'm speaking to, like I see in their eye, they always have a
Like
moment where it's like, should I make a
these.
be more chill joke or yeah, yeah.
um, I read a really good book. Anthony Rapp's Without You memoir. Have you read that?
Yeah, I read it too during
You
quarantine, and I
did?
never would have read it. Yeah, if it
It's
wasn't
so
quarantine.
good.
Yeah, it's so good.
It's so
It's
good.
so good. I loved it. And there were so many. I know I love Rent a lot. And I love Jonathan Larson. And there were so many stories that I had never heard before in that book.
Yeah. Yeah.
I loved it.
I loved it.
Yeah, me too.
With his mother, that was so nice.
I know. I
Yeah.
know. Wild, wild.
Yeah.
But I love too, like how I think that art is so personal, and it's
Yeah.
like we see things, and then how the ways that they connect to our own lives, it
Yeah.
just can't you can't help but put yourself into the thing, and that's what that whole book feels like, and
Yeah.
it was wild to be like, oh, he was not only putting himself and his experience with his mom into the piece of art that is Ramp,
Mm.
but into his own experience of
Yeah.
Ramp. It was, yeah. So
Yeah.
it's so amazing.
So
So
good.
great.
I
Yeah.
recommend that book to anyone. I'll put a link to it. Go read it.
Yeah. Great book.
Um, um, okay, so again, we already talked about this before, but everyone wants to know, do you think that now with other shows opening up that Be More Chill has a future in 2021? And what about your other shows like Love and Hate Nation or Broadway Bounty Hunter?
Um, okay, so I think that Be More Chill absolutely has a future. Like it's everyone who is working on it wants it to be back on
Yeah.
a stage. And so my hope and my dream is that we'll be able to do that. And I think that we will,
Yeah.
because enough people want it. And so yeah, I think that. And then we're working on the movie. Like the movie is like, we've been like super low key
Yes.
about it, but it's a
Yeah.
real
I
it's a
was
real
wondering.
thing.
Yeah.
And so that's gonna happen. And Lauren went to a medium the other day.
Mm.
Like a person who like
Yeah, yeah,
speaks
yeah.
in spirits, and the medium said, was clearly talking about being more chill, and he was like, he's like, I something big is gonna happen with that in the next 2 years. It's gonna be a big next step of its
Oh,
life. So yeah. So the medium said
wow.
that it's
Okay.
definitely something's happening. So yeah, get ready for that. And then yeah, like Love and Hate Nation. I've like the quarantine has also been me like shouting about Love and Hate Nation so much on social media. But also it's like I want people to know that I want it to happen. I desperately want it to
Yeah.
happen. I want it to be on a stage again, and I want to make an album. And I think that will happen. And I get frustrated because I love the show so much, and I love all the people who did it, and I just feel like we should be able to do it on a stage. It's like we should be
Yeah.
able to do it. Like it's that we shouldn't have to work this hard, but we do. But we're gonna make it happen. So I think that
Yeah.
that one will end up on a stage as well.
Awesome. Yeah.
Yeah.
I really want to see that.
Thanks. I think people will dig it, and I know that there's like boots of it that are like
Yeah.
out in the world,
Yeah.
which I love, and I'm like please watch the bootleg, and please tell everyone that like you want to see it live
Mm,
and that you want an album.
definitely.
Go crazy, spread
Yeah,
the
I have a
word.
lot of friends who love it, so definitely.
Good, that makes me happy. The only thing though, and I really have to I have to investigate this. I think that like the bootleg that's out there is of an early preview, and I feel like because I watched like a second of it, and I feel like I've made changes since I made changes after that bootleg. So that's the only thing that I don't want people to get like too attached to it.
Hmm.
Or my worry is that like with the changes, people would be like, oh, this is even better than I thought it
Yeah.
was. So that's why like there's got to be the official shit out there, so people know like the most updated version.
Yeah, definitely. Okay, awesome. So here's a bit of a different question. Who
Okay.
slash what inspired you to become a composer? Also, any advice for aspiring composers?
Okay, so I guess there's a few answers for who slash what.
Who
I
slash what?
um the so the first like bit of musical theater I was probably exposed to was the Muppets. And
Yes.
so and so the Muppets were a big influence on me in ways that I understood at the time, in ways that I continue to understand. But just I love like the Muppet Show, and I really love the Muppets Take Manhattan,
Hmm.
and and the just this idea of this like family of creatures who like kind of like live in a theater, and they just like they live together and they just put on shows. That's just clearly something that's like, oh, that's what my life is. That's what I have done with my life. I have just created the live action
You're
Muppets.
like I'm actually a Muppet.
It's yeah, no, and like I can fully recognize that I am so I am so Muppety in so many ways. But yeah, so they were a big influence, and Little Shop of Horrors was the first
Yeah,
musical that
yeah.
I ever saw. And that I was a kid who was like I was super quiet when I was a kid. I was kind of shy, and I saw Little Shop when I was 6. And I was also like I was like one of those kids that was really scared of things. Like I would see like a movie or whatever and I
Hmm.
would cry, and but Little Shop of Horrors, I just loved it. I thought it was like the best thing, and it didn't scare me. I didn't cry, which was so unlike me. And I fell in love with the art form of musical theater. Like it
Yeah.
wasn't like I saw Little Shop of Horrors and I was like, oh, I love plants, or I love puppets.
Hmm.
I was like, oh, I love being in a theater, and I love having people act out a story and sing things. And I just was like, this is what I want to do. And so it's so crazy, but like that show zapped the love of musical theater into me,
Yeah.
and it was just immediate, and it changed my whole life.
Yes, I love that. I was in a
Yeah.
production of it, and we had the puppet. Um, we had one of so it was like a summer like kids summer program,
Hmm.
and one of the counselors was so we had a kid that voiced Audrey 2 off stage, and one of the counselors was bent down inside of it and had to like move his head up like that to get the mouth to open and close, and it was hilarious. Um, but yeah, I love Little Shop. I saw a production of it last summer with do you know Andrew Keenan Bolger? He was Crutchy and
Yeah, yeah,
Issues. Yeah,
yeah, of
he
course.
played Seymour. It was in the Cape. It was
Oh, right, right,
it was at the
right,
Cape
right.
Playhouse, and
Yeah.
I saw it twice. And Miles Jacoby, who was in Book of Mormon, he played Oren. And who played Audrey? I forget her name. She was in that. Do you know that The Search for Legally Blonde, Elle Woods thing?
Yes, yes, I do.
She was in that.
Was it Autumn Hurlburt?
No, it was she was one of the four. Um, I forget. I don't know. But she was in it.
The only reason that I know that is because Lauren Marcus watched it a month ago. She watched every single
Yeah.
episode, and I and so like and I hadn't seen it. I had
Yeah.
like not seen it. It's nuts.
Yeah, I've seen it a few times. But it's such like a like weird thing. Like people probably think that's how casting actually works from that. You know what I mean? Like
I know. I was like I truly couldn't believe it. Like what I watched. I watched like a bunch of episodes throughout, and like and Jennifer Ashley Tupper, who's one of our best friends.
hmm.
She is so obsessed with it. She's so obsessed, and has been like pressuring Lauren to like watch it for real for years. And so I couldn't believe it. Them like singing on the treadmills and
Yeah,
crying.
yeah. It's
It's
so
like
like some of it
it's
is
insane.
some of it is so staged. I feel like it's like
Yeah, yeah.
um but yeah, it's so again, so that it's called what was it called? The Search for Elwoods. Anyone who hasn't watched it, go watch it. Like it's on YouTube. Some of the episodes. And there's this eyeliner commercial that like comes on in between every episode. It's like I forget what it's called, but it's funny. Okay, so now favorite thing about being a composer. Also favorite show that you've composed. Probably hard to pick.
And it's hard to pick. My favorite thing about being a composer. I mean, I just love I love the lifestyle. I love it. I love I love everything about it, to paraphrase a line from Almost Famous. Like
Hmm.
like, to begin with, everything. Like I love being in rehearsal. I love collaborating with actors and directors and designers. I love going to the theater. I love previews. I love the performances. Even, my experiences in theater have been, as I've said, very stressful. And like, I've never had an easy show ever, ever, ever. I've never had an experience of like writing a show and it, opening and it was well received and it went to Broadway. Like, I've not had those experiences. I've had to like fight for the shows and I've had
Yeah.
to defend them and I've all this stuff. And but even with that, it's like I just love it. I think it's like the absolute best thing. And I think that the life is like, it's really crazy and it's really hard and it's really, there's no stability, and the lows can be like really, really low, but like the highs are like higher than anything else. And so,
Yeah.
yeah, I just love it. And as far as my favorite show, I always used to say it was Blood Song of Love. Like, I had a real soft spot for Blood Song because, I mean, I just like that show a lot, and it's probably it's one of the pieces of art that I've worked on that people kind of know the least,
Hmm.
just because there's not a lot of content there, out there about it. And so it's always had this like special place in my heart. And making that show, like the rehearsals and putting it together, it was just one of the greatest times of my life. And I was working with my friends, and it really felt like we were given the opportunity to do something. And it felt like, oh, this could be like the start of a really amazing thing. And so I love that show a lot. But I'm also like, I Love Innate Nation is one that I'm so proud of. And it's a show that I just believe in so strongly. And I feel like whether it's good or bad, the way it ended up, the show that's like on the stage is like what I wanted it to be. So that one I love a lot too. They
Hmm.
both of those shows have special places in my heart. But I like them all.
Yeah.
I've never written a show where I then look back at it and I'm like, that sucked. Like
Yeah.
I really believe in everything
Yeah.
that I've written. And I think that's also because I've never done the thing where I like took a gig for money. I've never done the thing where I wrote something that I maybe didn't fully believe in.
Hmm.
Anything that I've written, I would like lay down on train tracks for. And so I think that creates some problems sometimes when it's like you have to pay your rent and you're
Hmm.
like, oh, well, it's like
Yeah.
Blood Song of Love isn't making me any money. But on the flip side of that, it's like I can honestly say like I'm really proud
Yeah.
of the stuff that I put out in the world.
Yeah. Um. When. Okay, so when you didn't, this was back during Two River, but didn't the New York Times give Be More Show like a bad review?
They did very much so, and very many
What would,
times.
why? Why would they do that?
Please, please.
Why?
That is the best reaction I've ever heard to that to the New York Times giving Marshall a bad review. Why would they do
Why would
that?
they do that? Yeah.
What's their problem? I mean, I have. What's so funny is that when Be More Chill opened initially and it got a bad review in the New York Times, the review was all about how it was like they were just like, it's silly. It's like silly. It's like some silly, stupid science fiction musical. Who cares? It's just stupid and silly and blah blah blah. And like that was what the whole review was. It's just like The Walking Dead and Glee and like who cares? And so it was very
What?
dismissive of the show. Yeah, it was so funny. And so then obviously, like when Be More Chill like took off because people, like actual human beings, like fell in love with it,
Mm,
like the thing that people, cared about was like Michael in the bathroom,
yeah.
and people like immediately started responding to like these the issues in the show and like the heavier stuff, and people were like, oh, this is actually like about something. And it was so the stuff that people loved about it was just like that wasn't even approached in that review. That
Yeah.
review was so like, the show isn't about anything. Who would like something like this?
Mm,
And then like when we got to New York and it was re-reviewed by the Times, and they still hated it, but it's like then the review was all about how oh, the audience is like so moved, the audience is
mm,
screaming and the audience is loving it, and this like is a show for kids. And it was just like, this isn't, it's like they actually, if you read like all the reviews that it got, like they're like hating on it for different for different
yeah.
reasons every step of the way, in such a strange way. But
Yeah. I feel like they should read the book too.
Mm-hmm.
Like, because the book, I feel like, I don't know. Well, I was gonna say gives more detail about, you know what I mean?
Yeah, sure.
Like, I don't know. They're insane, but anyways,
Insane, but no, I mean, they're, everyone is
yeah,
entitled to their
different,
own
yeah,
opinion. Yeah, I do in general wish that, I definitely think there's a bias against shows that people perceive as being shows that are for young people, which
like,
really just means, like, if young people
mm,
love them, what's been so wild to see is like shows that young
Dear Evan
people love.
Hansen and stuff.
Yeah, but Dear Evan Hansen, the thing about Dear Evan Hansen is that it's just as much about the adults.
Yeah,
And so, critics can look at that show. And
yeah,
Dear Evan Hansen is great, I'm
mm,
not saying anything about that. But like, critics can look at that show and be like, oh, there's something for me too.
yeah,
But I
yeah,
think as soon as something is like just about young people, it's so easy to say like,
yeah,
oh, this is about young people. But what I never understand about that is like, well, we have to watch, like, we watch shows about, like, fucking old white men all the
yeah.
time, and no one's ever like, another show about old white
Hmm.
men. Like, no, so who cares? It's very strange
Yeah.
to me. But
So the cast recording was made, and then that kind of put out the publicity to get to New York.
yeah, and really, it was the cast recording was made. Then the cast recording was made because this man who was the head of the board at Two River Theater, his name was Bob Recknitz, and he just died a little over a year ago. And he was in his 80s
Wow.
at the time. He just absolutely loved the show. He thought the show was awesome. He was like the biggest fan of Michael in the Bathroom before anyone cared about that song. And he was just like, this is bullshit that because we got this silly review that nothing's going to happen with the show, and the show deserves to be recorded. And so he just paid lots of money for us to make this album. And the album was like really embraced by people. But the wild thing, and this is something that I always try to stress to like young people who are trying to make their way in the theater, like the album it took 2 years before anyone cared about it, like before anyone really discovered it. It was it was a slow burn, and it was like the slowest burn of slow burns, because it just kind of sat there, and then eventually people found it and sort of fell in love with it. But it wasn't the kind of thing where like the world was waiting for our album when we released it, and they were like, finally, Be More Chill. It was really organic, and people just like discovered that thing.
Yeah, I think
and that's how we got to New York. Yeah.
I think I found it. It was either Michael in the Bathroom or I Love Play Rehearsal, one of those two. But it was after well, I knew about it, and then like I knew about it, I think, when it was off Broadway, and then I didn't really get into it. I didn't really get into it until it was almost closing.
Yeah,
so
I know.
that's what happens with like every show that I get. It's like Newsies. Like I got really into that, and that's been closed since like 2014, the tour. But
yeah.
So yeah, no. But I know there are like a lot of people that I know have known about it since Two Rivers. So like,
yeah.
What was that one that you were talking about? It was one you said people don't know much about. Blood something.
Yeah, Blood Song of Love.
Who was it? I have to listen to that. Who was in that?
So Blood Song of Love, it was a show that we did at Ars Nova, which is the theater that Natasha and Pierre started at. And it was Eric William Morris was the musician. So Blood Song of Love is the spaghetti western musical, and it's a musical about this man who's an artist who's known only as the musician, and he's on a quest to try to get his bride back from the evil clutches of Lo Cocodrillo, who's like a kazoo playing madman. And it's about being an artist, and it's about creating a family, and a lot of the stuff that I write about all the time. But so it was Eric William Morris was the musician. His best friend Banana was played by Lance Rubin. And as very often in many of my shows, there was like a very intense relationship between these two male characters, in a way that was not a a sexual relationship or like a love story in a conventional way, but like clearly like these two men loved each other. And so I do wish that like, I wish that Blood Song of Love would be out now, just because I think that like the people who were into it would just like lose their minds with the like
Yeah.
with ships in the show. Like there's just so many characters.
So many fan fictions would come out.
So much. Oh my God, so much fan fiction. But yeah, Blanche Newman was Banana, who was like his sort of childlike sidekick who played the tambourine, and who else was in it? Jason Sweet Tooth Williams was the narrator, and then played a bunch of characters throughout, including a one-eyed bartender named Earl, and Jeremy Morris was the villain, the Cocodrillo. Yeah, it was a show that I loved a lot, and there was so much blood in it, and we had a splatter zone the first two rows of the orchestra. Yeah, just because it was like people were like getting shot and stabbing each other, and there was just blood exploding everywhere. It made me so happy. And there was this crazy ass scene at the end of Act 1, takes place in this bar called the Bone Bar, and it's like this big showdown at the Bone Bar, and so Jason Williams is this one-eyed bartender, and so he's pouring everyone Bloody Marys and whiskey, and like the joke is that he can't quite see the glasses, and so as he's pouring, he's just like pouring stuff all over the place. And so at the end of Act 1, the stage was truly it was literally covered in fake blood and fake whiskey and fake real tomato juice. So by the end of our run, there was like ants all over the set. So it was like sugar and tomatoes that was just caked in the set. It was so gross, but I loved it very much.
I wonder what they used for Sweeney Todd, like for blood.
I mean, it's what I've learned so much about blood in my career, because my shows often involve blood, and they use different things depending on how the blood has to interact with people, because they always want to use blood that has detergent in it, because if it gets on the costumes, then you have to be able to like get it off the costumes. Yeah. But if the blood gets by people's mouth or by their eyes, you can't use detergent, because it will send you to the hospital for getting in your eyes, or if you swallow it, which happened multiple times on the Song of Love. People were always going to the hospital because they had eaten or got poison in their eyes. So, yeah. Oof. It's very complicated using blood in shows.
So do you think that the unemployment benefits helped much, or do you think that more should have been given? Also, now with it being expired, how do you think people are getting by?
I mean, any help is like appreciated for sure. But it's just, especially for people in the arts, we just need to figure out how to help more, and I know it's easier said than done, of course, but it's, people can't exist on, a one-time payment of like $600, it's like, it just needs to be more. And it's something that I feel like some people don't fully recognize, that like artists and theater workers, they just don't, like, there's just literally no jobs. It's not the kind of thing where it's like, oh, the work is not as plentiful as it used to be. There's just there's nothing, like, it's just wiped out. And the way that people in the theater make their money is like, they only make money when something is running, and when it's not, like, they don't, and then the unemployment runs out, and then what do you do? And so there just needs to be some help for people who work in an industry that makes a lot of money for everyone. Yeah. I don't know how we do that, but it needs to happen.
Yeah. So I also heard that there was a letter that hundreds of artists signed asking President-elect Biden for support. Do you think that there's hope for anything to come of that?
I hope so. Like the dream is that once Biden takes office, that some things will get better. I don't know if they'll get good, but hopefully better, which I think really would be a lot, Yeah. And it's the, with all the Trump stuff, it's like the guy, I think one of all the terrible things that he did, one of the worst things he did was he just sort of, I feel like, really, he brought out the worst in people, and America is always going to be a place that's divided. America is always going to have people who are, assholes all over it. But I think that sometimes the best we can hope for is those people who are assholes or worse they should feel they should feel afraid to let their opinions be known. It's like these people who, it just feels like the so many things that were kind of deeply suppressed in our country were allowed, not only were allowed to bubble to the surface during the last 4 years, but they were encouraged and they were nurtured, and it allowed those feelings and those actions to bloom. And I think that we're never going to be able to like eradicate some stuff about America, but we can, like, at the very least try to, like, cut it down, and we could try to sparse it out and embolden the right people. And so I'm hoping that with Biden in office, it will embolden the right people, which I hope will have ripple effects that will, help us in all sorts of ways, including getting some actual monetary relief for people in arts professions who need it.
Yeah. Yeah, definitely. I'm going to put, so actually I'll say that at the end, but because this is the last question.
Ooh,
last question. Okay, so this kind of like is a wrap-up question. What do you anticipate when things open back up? Do you think that people will be hesitant? What do you think will have changed, such as stage touring?
I don't know. I mean, I believe, and this is not a scientific or particularly informed opinion, but just in my interactions with people and what I have seen with my own eyes, I think that people are really, really hungry for a live theatrical experience. And so I think that people will want to be safe and will want to follow protocols and all of that.
Definitely.
But I do not worry about there not being an audience for live theater, because I think it's something that will, like, simply never go away, and I think that people desperately need it. I think people need live theater just as much as they need going to the supermarket and going to retail and all of that. And so I think that as soon as we figure out a way to do it safely, socially distanced, and then hopefully not socially distanced, people will be back for it. I really, really believe that. And as far as stage touring goes, like, I love stage touring. I love that it exists. I love that it's a thing. I recognize that at this moment in time, in the same way that, like, you can't sit arm to arm in a theater with a lot of people, you can't stand arm to arm, with people outside of a stage door. But I think that there can be a way to make it work, in the same way that, like, there's going to be a way to make concerts work, like concerts where you're standing in a little room, like, and so we're going to figure out a way to make stage touring work. And I certainly want it to happen. Like, it just has to.
Yeah, definitely. Because I was just in, that was actually a while ago. Now things around me are getting a little bit worse, but I was in a while ago, a production of Addams Family, in, like, a community theater. And it was, we rehearsed outside, and it was socially distanced and everything, but that so I think that, like, some community theaters are doing shows right now, but, like, some aren't. Like, now, before I was in that, now I'm in a production of, do you know A Little Night Music?
Yeah, of course.
Yeah, I'm Henrik in that.
Oh, cool. Congrats.
And then, so that will be we're only rehearsing once a week for that, and, like, we're, like, always 6 feet, but that will happen, I think, in the summer. So I think that definitely things actually that are going to be happening in person are definitely going to be pushed towards maybe, like, July.
Yeah.
Or, like, that time.
Late
spring, summer time.
Which, like, to me now, that feels so not far away at all.
Yeah, because the months went by really fast.
Isn't that nuts? Like, doesn't time go by so fast when you're kind of stuck?
Yeah. It's weird.
It's so weird. It's really so weird. Yeah, this has been, like, the fastest year of my life in which I've done nothing.
Like, it was just April.
Yeah.
Yeah. It's insane.
Yeah.
Yeah.
But hopefully we'll be back. We'll be back soon.
Definitely.
This summer.
Yeah. Okay. Awesome. Thank you so much.
Yeah, of course.
So there will be a couple links down below to donate to charities like Broadway Cares and the Actors Fund. and probably a few more once I get them. But yeah, so you guys should all donate to those to help out. That would be awesome. And thank you, Joe, for coming on. It was awesome.
You're very, very welcome. It was an honor to be here. This was a great combo.
So yeah, and I wore my jacket kind of like the one you were wearing in Vermont.
I was gonna comment on it. It's very, very beautiful, and I feel severely underdressed.
No, it's fine.
Which I so rarely am.
Well, I mean, people are now. Like, that's a thing. Like,
I know, but I hate that. And now, and then the second I saw you in your badass jacket, it's like, why did I do this?
Because I saw it. Like, I saw a video of you. It was hilarious. It was like a skit. It was, what was it? It was with Jason Sweet Tooth. It was like, oh, be more chiseled. And you kept coming back in your like suit, and you kept putting layers of like dressed up clothing on. You guys just be going to the gym. That was funny.
I forgot that we did that. It's very much a thing with me. I truly like, I feel like the most comfortable like when I'm wearing a suit.
Yeah.
And like if I have to like be in like a t-shirt, and I literally bought the first pair of sweatpants I've ever bought my whole life like during this quarantine.
Yeah.
Because like I guess as you wear sweatpants, that's something that people wear. I always feels like I don't feel quite like myself in this, you know? But your jacket's very beautiful. I salute you. Style.
Yours had like flower. I remember yours had like flower buttons or something.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. Good memory.
Love that. And it was from like a soda place. I don't know. It was like a
Scotch and Soda.
Scotch and Soda,
Your memory is it's killer.
So yeah, awesome. Thank you.
Yeah, my friend.
This has been awesome.
This is great.
Yeah, love it. This will be up. This is I forgot to say this is episode 3, so this will be up in probably a few weeks.
Great. I can't wait.
Awesome. Cool.
I'll push it all over the place. Yeah.
All right.
Of course.
Bye.
Be well. Bye, my friend.